Keir Tal picked the red evacuation loop before Mara Voss had finished buckling her belt. At the Academy of 9 Orbits, they fastened a loop like that to the gear of a cadet who had washed out. Medics clipped stretchers to it when the cadet could no longer leave the route under their own power. Keir snapped the red strip to Mara's side and turned the clasp outward so the whole starting hall could see the marker. "Leave it on her," he told the quartermaster. "When they carry her back out, you won't have to look for an attachment point." A short laugh passed through the formation, not a shared one. The cadets at the black gates knew too well what lay on the other side to laugh for long. Mara looked at the loop, then at Keir. "Then don't fall behind the marker." She did not remove the strip. Keir was the kind of person whose own results permitted gestures like that. Top of the class. Record holder on the white descent, the safe rehearsal where instructors could still stop each section separately. A single star gleamed on his shoulder, the mark of a cadet who had never once called for help on a graded route. When the instructor said the word strongest, no one else asked who they meant. Mara had been at the academy 3 months. They had admitted her people after several border rescue operations that were talked about louder than whole campaigns by the old species. Keir considered that a poor way to recruit. On the border, people chose their own ground and their own rules, he said, while the quartermaster checked the fastenings. Here, everyone gets one route. No burning ships, no lucky hatches, no beautiful exceptions, just results. So why are you working so hard to get mine in advance? I'm saving time. Your species turns survival into legend. Today, the legend gets measured. He spoke calmly. He was not trying to shake her off the trial and did not touch the sound fastenings. For Keir, humiliation was not a flash of malice, but the announcement of an order he already knew. The strong walk out, the weak get carried, and people finally take their place between those two states. The quartermaster set a low box with narrow slots in front of the formation. Cadets began dropping sealed tags into it, one by one. Before the black descent, each one recorded a final message to their family. Anyone who made it out got their tag back, unopened. For the rest, a representative of the house came to collect it. A heavy cadet with combat patches held his tag so long the metal disappeared into his palm. He had survived 2 boarding actions on airless ships and once carried a commander out through a torn airlock. But when the first dull impact sounded beyond the gates, the veteran slipped the tag into his pocket and stepped out of formation. No one laughed. Trial Master Ursa only marked the withdrawal on her tablet.
Everything is in order.
Mara had written her message the night before. Now all she had to do was drop the tag into the slot. It struck the bottom of the box among dozens of others. The sound came out too light for something that might not be returned to her. Ursa walked in front of the formation. She was shorter than most of the cadets and did not raise her voice. On the black descent, volume changed nothing. The trial completes the first course for field commanders. Those who finish will receive the black cord and the right to assemble an Expedition 4. First one out chooses before the rest. Those who do not finish remain in subordinate groups. Next attempt in 1 academic year. Keir touched the single star with 2 fingers. A place in my 4 goes to those I don't have to come back for. He said it not to Mara, but to the entire formation. Several cadets straightened. The top cadet of the course had just reminded them that what was at stake was not a badge, but the right to stand beside him on a real expedition. Mara checked her belt. The red loop hung freely at her right hip. It could be unclipped with one motion. She left the fastener closed. Ursa raised her palm. The black gates parted. Cold stone and dust breathed out from within. The light beyond the threshold went down, then broke off. The impact sounded again, closer than before. This time the floor in the starting hall trembled. Keir entered first. Before the threshold, he did not look back once. Mara stepped in after him. When the gates began to close, the last cadets could still see the red stripe on her side. Then the gates shut, and the mark of the one who was supposed to be carried out vanished into darkness, along with the Academy's best cadet. The light did not disappear gradually. The gates closed, and Mara stopped seeing her own hand. The first strike passed through the stone from top to bottom. The ceiling dropped by a finger's width. Dry dust poured from the walls. Someone ahead gasped sharply. Nearby claws scraped. Mara did the same as the others, tried to speed up. Her shoulders immediately struck both walls. The second impact narrowed the passage a bit more, and her ribs were squeezed by the straps. Air came in short, not all the way. The taste of stone chips appeared on her tongue. A cadet screamed to the right. He was almost twice as wide as Mara, and used to clearing his path with force. Now every movement turned him sideways across the passage. He struck his elbows against the walls, brought new stone down on himself, and shouted to someone to stop the section. The first exit handle lit up in the darkness. It was closer than the end. Another flared ahead, then a third. Red lights hung where the most confident participants had been just moments before. The third strike forced Mara to press her cheek to the cold floor. Her heart beat so hard, it seemed to be trying to complete the route separately from her. She was not calm. She wanted to lunge for the red handle, hear the wall opening, and see again a ceiling that did not move. A voice without a face came from memory, an old voice from an emergency crew in an underground settlement. Not soothing, almost angry. 4 breaths, 3 anchors, 1 movement. Mara stopped looking for the whole exit. On the first breath, she felt her left knee. On the second, her right palm. On the third, she braced the toe of her boot against a ledge behind. 3 points held her even when the stone rumbled again. She did not finish the 4th breath. She let the air out and pushed her shoulders through where a second ago they had not fit. The world contracted to the next movement. Somewhere ahead, Keir moved fast. Mara heard the even strikes of his boots and sometimes a short scrape against the wall. He did not reach for the handles, but he moved as if the darkness were an opponent he had to outpace. Mara checked the floor with her palm. Between the stone and her wrist passed a faint, cold current. Air was moving toward the exit. She dropped lower and crawled after him. When a strike sounded, she pressed her elbows down and stayed on 3 points of contact. When the pressure released, she exhaled and made 1 movement. Behind her, someone yanked a handle. A section of wall opened, and the scream cut off, along with the sound of someone else's steps. Another cadet was out, then another. Red light momentarily pulled dust and tense faces out of the darkness, but Mara did not look back. One of the larger participants caught up with her and tried to push through from above. His knee hit Mara in the thigh. "Move it, human!" She did not speed up. At the next constriction, he squared his shoulders again, got stuck, and started pushing the wall. Mara let out her breath, slipped under his arm, and left him beside a handle that had lit up. The strikes were coming more frequently. Counting distance was impossible, but counting breaths was possible. 4. 3 points of contact. Palm, knee, toe. 1 exhale, 1 movement. When a white strip appeared ahead, Mara first took it for a new handle. Then she felt air on her face. The passage stopped narrowing, and she tumbled out onto an open platform, still pressing her elbows to her body. Keir stood by the next door. He had come out earlier. His uniform had dust on it, his breathing had deepened, but the solo star remained on his shoulder. He looked at Mara's red loop, then at the black passage behind her. No one else was emerging from the darkness. Behind the transparent observation wall, Ursa stopped the medical platform she had positioned in advance opposite the human exit. She waved briefly to the operator. The platform turned and moved toward the gates, where emergency hatches continued to open. Mara stood up. She wanted to unfasten the top buckle to free her chest, but her fingers missed the clasp. She tried again. Metal clicked against her nails. Now that the ceiling was no longer moving, her hands were shaking so badly she had to press them to her stomach. Keir saw all of this. He could have said the human was barely holding on. He could have pointed to his time, or to those who remained in the darkness. Instead, Keir said nothing. Keir's silence lasted until the start markers lit above the next routes. His name appeared above the center ladder, the shortest and widest. Mara's name glowed at the far climb, where the steps were narrower and the sidebars fewer. Keir removed his marker from the center holder, walked along the platform, and installed it next to the human route. The observer raised his head. Reassignment is voluntary. Previous advantage will not be returned. "I will not need it," Keir answered. He stepped onto the neighboring lane. Now only a graded partition remained between him and Mara. "In the dark you had something to hide your pace behind," he said. "Here you will see how far you are falling behind." Mara finally managed the top buckle. Her hands were still trembling. "You gave up the better ladder to show me your advantage? So you will have no legend about different conditions." Before them rose the heavy ladder. The first dull strike pressed the cadets to the steps. For a moment, their own bodies became weights they had to hold. Then the pressure released, and Keir flew up 3 bars at once. Mara rose 1. The second strike came sooner. Keir managed to secure both hands and one leg. Mara left a palm, knee, and toe. 3 points. The stone rumbled, chest pressed into the edge of the step. When the weight released, Keir jumped up again. Mara only moved her right hand and pulled up her legs. "Already saving strength?" Keir called from above. She didn't answer. On this ladder, an answer also had weight. The third strike forced one cadet to release the bar. The safety line held him, but the attempt ended. The lane carried him down. Keir looked at the freed space and accelerated. Mara looked at the red loop at her hip. She threaded it around the next bar, passed it behind her back, and tightened it at her waist. Now not only her fingers took the strike. During the heavy phase, Mara hung in the loop, keeping one palm and 2 legs on supports. When it released, she loosened the strap and moved it higher. Keir noticed the red stripe. The marker came in handy. Don't fall behind it. He jumped 3 more steps. Mara moved slower, but didn't lose a single light interval. Keir won height in bursts. She took it 1 bar at a time. After several strikes, his breathing became louder. Mara's ribs ached, and the loop cut into her waist, but the rhythm remained the same. At the middle of the ladder, the pressure released slightly shorter. Mara shifted her right palm, but didn't manage to set her toe. A new strike tore her from the step. The red loop instantly tightened. Her left arm jerked upward. Something crunched in her shoulder. Her side struck stone. Air vanished. White light flashed before her eyes. Mara hung on the strap. Her left hand responded, but she couldn't raise the arm. From above, Keir stopped for one heavy phase and looked down. "Exit handle to your right. I see it." Then the decision is simple. Mara set her right foot on the step, then her left. She pressed the useless arm to her chest. On the exhale, loosened the loop and raised it to the next bar. "That's exactly why you don't understand it," she said. Keir moved up until the next strike. Now every movement of Mara's began with pain. She could no longer hold 3 supports with 2 hands. She had to leave her right palm in place while her legs searched for the step. The loop replaced her left. Her pace slowed but didn't fall apart. Keir saw the finish platform of the stage and decided to finish before the person recovered her rhythm. In a light interval, he jumped 3 steps, then 2 more. At the last height, the pressure returned when his right palm just touched the edge. Keir pulled his body up with the strength of one arm and landed. The sound was quiet, a dry click inside the right grip plate. He immediately clenched his fingers, but the palm didn't close completely. Mara climbed onto the platform later. She bent over, holding her left elbow to her body. Keir stood by the board. His time was still better. The medic approached Mara first, saw the position of the shoulder, and raised a brace. "Not now," she said. "Fix it to my body." They bound her left arm tightly to her chest. This didn't treat the tear, only prevented an accidental movement. With Keir, the medic took his right palm and tried to close the plate. It stopped at half. The joint needs fixation. 4 minutes of mandatory stop. Keir looked at the board. His advantage over Mara was less than 4 minutes. Then, at the red loop that still held her belt. "I refuse. The crack will remain until the end of the route." Keir pulled his hand away, wrapped the palm himself with tight tape, and tightened the knot with his teeth. "I'll have enough until the end." He walked to the door of the final section. Mara noticed. Opening the lock, Keir worked with his left hand. After the bandaging, he never clenched his right hand completely. Behind the wall, Ursa scrolled through the general summary, where passage was compared by species, height, and number of limbs. Closed it. "Remove the species forecast," she told the observers. "From this moment, record Voss's decisions separately." The final door opened at height. Beyond it, 2 narrow paths rose above an empty hall and gradually converged toward a black bell. From here, it seemed small, but the sound of a falling stone flew down so long that no one tried to determine the depth. Keir entered first. He closed the lock on his guide rail with his left hand. The right remained tightly bandaged. Mara clipped in behind. Her left elbow was pressed to her chest. The loop hung at her right hip. On the board between the paths, Keir's advantage glowed. It no longer amounted to 4 minutes, but still made him first. On the ridge, you couldn't jump 3 steps. There were no steps here, only a sloping strip, rare handholds, and a headwind that came in gusts. Keir moved fast, transferring almost all the grip to his left palm. Mara placed her feet wider and waited for the gust to pass. Keir looked back several times. Each time the human was closer. "Do you need my pace, Voss?" he shouted. "Not anymore." At the first narrows, Keir tried to pull himself up with his left hand, but his body had to turn. His right palm landed on the edge only for balance. The fingers didn't close. He lost the second. Mara approached from the other side. She couldn't reach with her left, but the ridge allowed bracing with her shoulder and moving with her legs. She passed the narrows lower, almost sitting, and for the first time found herself level with Keir. He saw the red loop beside his solo star, pushed harder and moved ahead again. Behind the transparent observation wall, no one spoke. Yrsa stood between two screens. On one, Keir maintained the best overall result. On the other, the human marker moved toward the bell faster. Medical teams waited behind closed entrances. Before the route ended, they couldn't come out onto the ridge without stopping it for everyone. The paths converged. Now Keir and Mara moved along one line. He reached the last climb first, placed his left foot, and reached with his left hand. A headwind gust turned his torso. The next movement required shifting weight to the right. Keir looked at his bandaged palm, then at the bell. He shifted the weight. The grip plate closed halfway and opened. Keir struck his chest on the edge, managed to catch hold with his left hand, but his legs already went down. The guide rail arrested the fall and threw him onto a lower ledge. Mara pressed herself to the ridge. Above her, the black bell swayed from the gust. 3 movements remained to reach it. Right palm to the high ledge, both feet higher, then strike the metal. Time flashed on the board. Less than a minute. Keir lay behind and below, outside her lane. Mara could touch the bell before the next gust. A touch closed the route and locked in first place. A grinding sound came from below. Keir tried to rise, but his right leg was trapped between the ledge and the wall. He jerked it. The guideline pulled taut and pressed against a sharp edge. The outer sheath burst. Light strands showed through. "Don't move!" Mara shouted. The bell's 3 steps away. Keir pulled his leg again. 1 strand separated and hung loose. Then a second. Yrsa slammed her palm on the rescue call. On her screen appeared the entry opening time, after full ridge shutdown. She looked at Keir's unraveling line. It wouldn't last until shutdown. "Faster," the operator at the gates shouted. 40 seconds. Mara had less time to the bell. She shifted her gaze to the anchor of her own guideline. The rule glowed right on the clasp. Detachment outside an exit. Route abandoned. Reattachment did not restore credit. Keir saw where she was looking. "Don't you dare, Voss. Strike the bell. That's an order from the top cadet." Another strand separated. Keir's body dropped lower. Yrsa could not order a cadet to abandon the finish, and had no time to send help. For the first time in the entire black descent, she shouted into the hall, not a command. "Mara!" Mara looked at the black bell. With her right hand she could reach the first ledge. Beyond that, 2 more movements were required. She took hold of the guideline clasp and unclipped it. The sound came out quiet, but on the board the human lane immediately went dark. Instead of time appeared the inscription, "Route abandoned. Voss." Keir struck the ledge with his left palm. "I ordered you to finish." Mara tore the red loop from her belt. "Then for once, follow my order. Don't move." She ran the loop around the upper anchor and checked the tension with her right hand. Her left elbow remained tied to her chest. To descend, Mara turned her back to the void, braced both feet against the edge, and began gradually paying out the tape. Keir jerked his trapped leg again. The guideline scraped against stone. "Stop! It's tearing! That's why stop helping." Mara descended on her right arm and legs. Each time a gust came, she pressed herself to the wall with 3 points. There could be no fourth. Her left arm could not hold even its own weight. 1 breath. Move the right palm. 2nd. Lower a foot. 3rd. Check the loop. Above, the operator counted seconds until entry opening. Below, light fibers from Keir's guideline fell into the void. Mara reached the lower ledge. Here, space was enough for only 1. Keir lay on his side, his right leg trapped, left palm gripping the stone. His bandaged hand hung useless. "Free my leg and climb up," he said. "I'll hold on." Mara looked at his left palm. The fingers were already sliding through dust. No. She threaded the free end of the red loop under Keir's chest plate. Doing this with one hand didn't work. The tape caught on the edge of his uniform. Mara pressed it with her knee, pushed it under his side, caught it with her teeth, and pulled it out the other side. "What are you doing?" "Preparing an anchor point. The quartermaster shouldn't have to look for it." Keir's left hand tensed again. "Mara, the bell's already gone dark. Leave me for the rescuers. They won't make it in time. Neither will you." Mara tightened the loop around his chest. "4 breaths, Keir. On the 4th, you stop fighting. I'm not panicking. Then it'll be easy for you." On the 1st breath, he was still holding the stone. On the 2nd, he looked down. On the 3rd, the guide lost another strand. On the 4th, Keir released his left palm and gave his weight to the loop. Mara felt the jerk with her whole body. The anchor above took part of the load, but the red tape cut into her belt and ran along her left side. The injured shoulder pressed against the wall. She set her feet higher and pulled the free end with her right hand. Keir rose a few centimeters. The trapped leg didn't come free. "Turn your knee inward. The joint doesn't work that way. Today, it will." He turned. Mara shifted her weight back. The stone released the leg, and in that same instant, the remainder of the guide snapped. Keir fell. The red loop jerked through the anchor. Mara managed to pin the free end with her elbow, but the tension passed through the bandaged left side. A dull click sounded in her shoulder. The joint dislocated. She struck her forehead against the wall, and for a moment stopped hearing. All that remained was a white stripe of pain from neck to fingers. Her feet began to slip. "Let go!" Keir shouted from below. Mara pressed her soul to the ledge. The first breath didn't work. The air cut off. The second came in halfway. On the third, she felt her right palm. On the fourth, both legs. 3 points of contact. 1 movement. Mara braced with her feet and straightened. With her right hand, she pulled a little more length from the loop. Then again. Keir was rising, not because she was hauling him with one hand. His weight went through the upper anchor, and Mara each time gave him the movement of her legs and back. Above the ridge, the time reached 0. The black bell went dark. The closed rescue gates began to part. Mara continued. Keir reached the edge first. He caught on with his left hand but didn't try to pull himself up separately. He waited for the command. "Foot on the ledge," Mara said. "Now up!" He obeyed. Together they rolled onto the ridge. Mara remained lying down, pressing the dislocated arm to the stone. Keir tried to rise and collapsed onto the damaged leg. The rescuers were already running from the opened gates, but between them and the cadets remained the final climb. Mara removed the loop from the upper anchor, leaving it cinched around Keir's chest. She passed the free end through her own belt. "I can crawl," he said. "You can, but you won't clear the passage for them in time." She stood up. The left hand couldn't be used. The red loop bound them so that Keir's weight fell on her belt and legs. He helped with his one working palm, but Mara began each step. They passed the darkened bell. It was an arm's length away. Mara did not touch it. At the gates stood the same formation that had witnessed the beginning of the trial. The cadets looked first at the human line marked "Route Abandoned," then at Keir Tal, the Academy's top cadet, whom Mara Voss was leading on the red evacuation loop. When the rescuers took his weight, the tape remained cinched on Keir's chest. The clasp was turned outward. In the medical zone, they did not cut the red loop. The medic unfastened it on Keir's chest and laid it on the metal table between the 2 beds. Stone dust remained on the clasp. They set Mara's shoulder. She did not cry out before the click, but after it, she could not suppress a short sound and spent several seconds breathing with her forehead pressed to her knees. Her left arm was placed in a rigid brace. They freed Keir's leg and secured his cracked palm. He lay opposite. The solo star still clung to his shoulder, though the uniform had been cut by the medics nearly to it. Irsa entered with the trial protocol. "Both routes are closed without credit," she said. Voss left the guideline. Tal did not reach the exit independently. Keir turned his head toward Mara. "You could have finished." "Yes, you were first. 3 movements is not yet the bell." He fell silent. The medic opened the incident section. Damage to the guideline can be classified as an external accident. In that case, assistance received is not considered a cadet's request and does not affect the solo star. The fall will still close the black descent result, but the previous insignia will remain valid. Keir looked at the loop, then at his own right palm, enclosed in the brace. "The guideline tore after my fall. That is an acceptable interpretation of the cause of removal. That is an imprecise interpretation. The medic held his finger above the line. Keir sat up despite the restraining straps. With his left hand, he touched the solo star. He had done this before starting, as if checking that his entire path still belonged to him alone. Now the clasp would not yield with one hand. Ursa approached, but Keir stopped her with a look and removed the insignia himself, slowly, using his teeth to help. Record this. Could not get out. Was carried out by another cadet. Name the cadet, the medic asked. Keir looked across the gap between the beds. By Cadet Mara Voss, the medic entered the words. The solo star in the protocol became invalid. Keir held the insignia out to Ursa. She did not ask if he was certain. She simply opened her palm. The star settled onto it beside the tablet. Cadet Voss, Keir said. Mara raised her eyes. He took a long time preparing to continue. Then he looked at the red loop, at her bandage, and at the empty place on his own shoulder. I remembered the order. Mara nodded once. The black descent table was posted the next morning. Beside Mara's name stood, Route Abandoned. No time, no placement, no note that 3 movements remained to the bell. Next attempt in an academic year. Until then, Mara returned to the subordinate group. Keir's line was different, did not reach the exit independently. Beside it, the solo star mark had disappeared. His previous overall rating could not transform this result into a completed route. Cadet near a cell was first to touch the bell. She went later after Keir's fall on the second opened route and fulfilled the entire rule to the end. Ursa called her before the formation and placed the black command cord on her shoulder. Nira received the right to assemble the first Expedition 4. Mara stood in the last row. Her left arm was secured across her chest. Keir stood toward the front, though without the solo star, his uniform seemed unusually empty. Ursa returned the unopened tags to those who had withdrawn. Mara's tag lay among them. She took it with her right hand and slipped it into her pocket. The quartermaster placed the red evacuation loop on the repair counter. On one edge, the strap was stretched. The clasp still worked. 2 days later, the class was brought out to the training ground. Before them lay an ordinary search area, closed corridors, several exits, one notionally lost fighter. Here, no one could die. Usually such training was led by the top-ranked cadet, and after the black descent, the right passed to the holder of the black cord. Nara stood at the leader's line. Keir took position beside her as the former top-ranked. Mara remained in the subordinate row. Ursa brought out a plain gray tag. Such tags mark the leader only for the duration of one exercise. Today the conditions are different, she said. A cadet is lost in the zone. Choose whose orders you will follow on entry and return. Nara raised her palm, ready to receive the tag. Keir stepped out from the first row. His injured leg still made him limp. His right hand remained in the brace. He walked past Nara, past Ursa, and stopped behind Mara. No one spoke. Nara slowly lowered her hand. She removed the black cord from her shoulder, carefully secured it on her uniform so it would not catch during movement, and also moved behind Mara. Behind her stepped the heavy veteran, who had withdrawn before the black descent gates. Then the cadet Mara had passed in the dark passage. Then those who had reached the bell, and those who had been pulled earlier. The formation before Ursa emptied, while the line behind Mara grew longer. Mara did not turn until Keir said, "Cadet Voss, we await orders." She looked at Ursa. The results table remained on the wall of the training compound. The black cord remained with Nara. Ursa did not produce a new one, and did not correct Mara's line. She approached and placed on her right palm the gray tag of one training. Lead. Mara closed her hand around the tag, stepped beyond the line, and the entire formation moved after her.